Hello and welcome back to Time Under Tension. I'm your host, Olivia Gravengard, certified health coach, registered nurse, and professional bodybuilder. And this week we are talking about energy management. So, energy levels, that is a big topic now as science and public interest is branching into this realm of biohacking, where the focus isn't just on extending the lifespan, but extending the health span, which is more so the amount of time that you're able to sustain a high level of health and feel good, a sense of vitality in your life, which I think a lot of us now value, being in these generations where we're now seeing people live quite a bit longer, but spending many years of their lives towards the end sick or otherwise impaired, to where they can't really experience life at the fullest. And now most of us are wanting to find ways to bring our energy levels up so that we can really enjoy this life for as long as possible. And that as we live longer, the quality of life also expands. When we think about performing at a high level, one of the biggest barriers, if not the biggest barrier to this, is often energy levels. Many of us have every intention of showing up at a high level, and we know we can put in the work. We've proven to ourselves and others over and again that we can grind when we need to. Like, we know we can get it done. But the problem is, even if we're able to sustain this level of output for short bursts of times, we're not able to do so for a longer amount of time. So thinking about someone like an accountant who certain months of the year are quite busier than others, it can take a lot to rev yourself up to face those months of busyness. There's kind of this anticipation, however, that on the other side, you'll get that chance to kind of breathe again. Now, life does happen in pulses like this. We're not, hopefully, grinding 100% of the time, all the time. Like, that doesn't really work. And we see what that leads to, which we'll discuss a little bit later. But for the most part, we want to establish a level of output that we can maintain and return back to, so that we can continue moving forward with endurance, perseverance, focus, and maintain momentum as much as possible. When we have a lot of series of bursts of work, we tend to spend a lot of time trying to recover in a way that isn't very effective and doesn't allow us to maintain momentum very well. So an example of this, if we kind of think about like fitness, is if you're training incredibly hard, like say you're like zone 5 cardio, like you can only sustain that for like a minute. Like, you're not going to be there for a very long time before your system's just done. Like, you've reached the capacity of that energy system. And then it takes time, like the amount of time that it takes your heart rate to kind of come back down to your baseline after that is going to be a little bit longer than if you had, say, only gotten into zone 2 and then you're returning from there. Now, again, there's going to be times where we have to go to zone 5 in our output and certain demands in life and the amount of things that we're juggling, maybe even the amount of things that we have to get done in one day just out of the blue because of some work deadline or a school project or any other number of events, right? But on average, we want to start to establish what our like zone 2 cardio looks like. That zone in which we can really sustain output for an extended amount of time, and we can take time to kind of burst up and push forward a little bit more, and then we can return to that level of output. When we refuse to accept that this is how our system works, we will inevitably reach a state of burnout. The challenge with this is that we often can sustain really high intense output, a very imbalanced lifestyle, for a certain amount of time. And each of us has a different capacity for being able to sustain this. Another challenge is that that's often very glorified in our culture, grind culture. You know, you get up, you get up early, you get it done, you work out intensely, you go do CrossFit in the morning, you fast until lunch, you're grinding at work through the morning, you know, might have a part-time job or might go home and like be taking kids to sports practice, and you know, you get home and have more emails to open, and then it's midnight and you got to wake up in a few hours and do it all again. And there's never really this time to kind of stop and really recharge your system. And we can do that and sustain that for quite a while. But what happens subtly over time is that our system starts to create compromise. You're not getting the substrate, the input that you need, the adequate recovery, perhaps even like the nutritional fuel, the hydration, stress management, all of those things that kind of tie into energy management. You're not really giving the system what it needs. And so something's got to give at some point. And because we often don't experience it in real time, like say you undersleep for 20 days of a month. Okay, you try to catch up on the weekends, but 20 days of the month, you're not sleeping enough. You're going to get through the month, most likely. Like, unless you have some underlying issues, or again, this has been really, really long standing, you might get through the month and just notice like, all right, my caffeine intake went up a little bit. I'm fine. I'm getting it done. But when we do that for months, years, decades on end, the internal compromises that happen begin to erode our energy systems. We see decline in like mitochondrial health, which is our cellular capacity to produce energy. We see declines in our mental, like our cognitive capabilities, that then impacts the way that we are able to show up in our work. So it becomes very much a quantity game and we start to lose quality. But because that happens so gradually, we often overlook it. We ignore little signs that our body has reached the point of stress. And then that stress manifests in ways that we don't always directly tie to our lifestyle. Now, I do want to be clear that not every like medical condition, psychological condition, has to do with a mismanagement of energy, but it is clear that mismanaging energy does have significant long-term effects. Sleep in particular, if we just want to isolate it to one aspect of energy management, if you chronically undersleep, your risk for multiple negative medical conditions and cognitive decline is significantly higher. Period. There's no way around that. I have met so many people, I have coached so many people who come to me and say, I really only need 5 hours. I feel fine. I've done this my whole life. And my encouragement is, just because you have doesn't mean that it's working for you. And by optimizing sleep, we actually have the opportunity to improve the way that you're showing up from day to day so that you're getting more out of what you're doing. So you're leaving some gains, leaving some performance opportunities on the table because of your mismanagement of energy. Although there are individual variances, like I said, some people can really dig into work for maybe a longer amount of time with less negative impact on their system. And that's just genetic variation. It's how each person holds and handles stress differently. It also has to do with the cumulative amount of stress in your life. So you have to take all those things into consideration and really just let the freak go of comparison. Like, it's pointless. It'll drive you crazy. But what you also have to know is, like, we are all so similar, and our human animal bodies have certain specific physiological needs that if you can stop denying the fact that sleep is vital and sleep is going to be one of your biggest tools for recovery, and you start to actually tap into that as a tool and take advantage of it and use it, leverage it to support your highest level of functioning, you're now working with your body. You're now giving your body what it needs so that it can then show up for you. And that's really what this journey is about. We don't want to live in a state of burnout. Like, as much as we glorify overwork and grinding and productivity and progress and performance, so many of us are exhausted. We're exhausted. We're moving through life just grinding and hoping that if we run hard and fast enough that maybe we'll get ahead just enough to get a breath and then be able to rest and enjoy our lives. But we create this pattern of, productivity, which isn't negative in and of itself, but when again, it's this mismanagement of energy that we spend 90% of our lives not really enjoying it because we're running ourselves into the ground. And only when we hit a point of burnout do we finally get an opportunity to rest. Something I was thinking about recently with all this is I recently called in sick for work, and I had to sit with it because it's not something I do very often. And I honestly enjoy my work days. So I wasn't sick in that I had symptoms that had truly manifested. So I wasn't I didn't have a fever, I wasn't coughing, I had no respiratory symptoms, but I know my body enough that I could feel this high level of fatigue that always precedes getting sick if I choose to push through it. So instead, I took a wellness day, which I think makes a lot more sense, and a mindset that we could really benefit from in our culture is why do we wait until we're sick to make a change? Why do we wait until we have cancer to change our diets? Why do we wait until we've developed diabetes to address our relationship with food? Why do we wait until we have fatty liver, until we get real with ourselves about what our alcohol intake is doing? Why do we wait until we're sick to believe that we now have a right to take care of ourselves? And our entire medical system is based around that, and it capitalizes on it. But if we can start to take responsibility, because that's where the true change happens. I talk to a ton of people every single day who want to just talk about how shitty the medical system is. And I get it. I've been in it. I totally understand. I was trained by it. And I empathize and I'm angered by it. But also, if that's how you feel, then you got to make the change from within, which is realizing that you have to take responsibility for your health first and foremost. You can't outsource that. You can ask for help and support and guidance. And there's a lot of really great physicians and health personnel and healers out there who can support you in that journey. But you have to take responsibility. And I would encourage you to do so before you get sick. And this mindset around energy management and optimization is really, it's about taking responsibility. It's about saying, I don't want to show up and half-ass my life. I don't want to show up with half a tank each day and just try to keep plugging and hope that something changes. Instead, I'm going to make the changes that I need to make sure that I'm refueling properly, that I've got my body right, I've got my head right, I've got my heart right, so that each day I can show up with my highest level of energy and be completely invested in the day. When we are running on empty, our systems feel unsafe. We don't have everything that we need. We feel that sense of lack. We feel a little bit anxious that our body is deprived in some way of recovery. And when we are in a state of instability like that, where we feel unsafe, all we can do is react to life around us. It makes it really difficult to intentionally respond. But if you take responsibility for doing the things that you need to do to refuel your system, you then gain the power to respond intentionally in your life, which is beautiful. You get to start really creating the life that you want to have. You're no longer emotionally reacting in interactions, but you have the calm, fueled, focused, clarified wisdom to address situations as they come up, to be level-headed in conversations because you have everything that you need. You're very grounded, and that groundedness takes really managing your energy properly. We love some caffeine, we love some adrenaline, and a lot of us learn to run on that. As a nurse, I had 12-hour shifts like anyone else, and working nights especially. You just do what you have to do to get through it. And you really, the amazing thing about the body is it's very adaptive, but what we don't often give heed to is that those adaptations can come with a cost. So I learned to train my body to stay up through the night. I learned how to time my caffeine in order to get me through a night. I learned how to keep myself like aroused enough to be present throughout an entire shift, especially in those really early morning hours where that fatigue starts to set in. And I learned how to leverage my adrenaline, and I used adrenaline, and a lot of times those of us who have to work shift work like that, or just demanding jobs in general, we start to get kind of addicted to the adrenaline rush, such that actually slowing down and resting can begin to feel so unfamiliar that it feels unsafe. And we have to kind of retrain ourselves to find safety and stillness. And that's, I think, one of the hardest things to overcome about this is that there's a bit of a leap of faith between just digging into the daily grind and being familiar with what that feels like, and then trying to move towards trusting that if I slow down, if I get present, if I tap in, if I create time to rest in my day, if I protect my sleep hours at all costs, I have to trust that that's going to actually allow me to keep doing everything that I need to do, even though it may seem like now I'm getting less time to work. But if you have less time, but you're coming to it with a lot more effectiveness, couldn't you get more done? And that's the question that we have to answer. And we can only answer it by truly trying it and committing to it. And knowing that our natural tendency, if we are like overworkers, is that we're going to drift back towards that, especially when we start to get anxious, and to actually hold ourselves accountable to recognizing those signs, to backing up and saying, I'm drifting again. I'm starting to push into overwork. Let me back up. Let me take a day to recover. Let me reset. Let me refuel my system. Let me nourish and nurture myself a bit so that I can come back at full capacity tomorrow. So where do you go? Like, you might have an idea that you're an overworker and you want more balance, and you kind of know that you're not getting enough sleep, and you kind of know that you don't really take rest days, and you kind of know that you're pretty stressed out a lot of the times, but like, it's gotten you this far and it's gotten you to where you are. So, do I make a change? How do I make a change? It feels really scary to even think about like just trying to chill and be zen and meditate. We often think of extremes. So we're thinking, oh my God, I got to go from being like, a toxic workaholic to a Zen Buddha master. And it's like, that's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for is to create pockets of recovery in our day so that we can show up more consistently and sustainably and effectively throughout our days. So tracking is huge. I think tracking recovery parameters is really important. I love using a tracker. My favorite is Whoop, Aura, Garmin. Those are great as well. Aura has a really great sleep tracker. Garmin's really good for like workout output. I can talk more about that in another episode. But having a tracker kind of gives you some objective data, but then also having a personal tracker or a way to check in with yourself where you're addressing each of the parameters that kind of revolves around energy. It's like energy, how's your sleep quality? How's your digestion? How's your mindset? How are your energy levels throughout the day? How's your ability to respond versus react? Your like emotional regulation. How is your muscle recovery? Are you feeling like you recover between workouts? Are you progressively more and more sore? Are you developing more joint pain? Are you experiencing any like strange symptoms in your body? For example, one of mine is when I get stressed, when I start pushing myself really hard, I break out in a rash. And it took me a really long time to figure out what it was, because I thought it was some kind of food, and I maybe some food allergies or sensitivities, and maybe it was lotion, maybe it was detergent, maybe it was like fabrics. And I tried all kinds of things. I went to dermatologists and they said, yeah, you're having an allergic reaction and we just don't know to what. And I could not figure it out. And over time, I've realized that when I get stressed, I break out in a rash. That's it. And I have to notice that. That is for me starting to become like a red flag. So the way I like to think about this is, as you track those parameters, you want to be reflecting on those. How are, day to day? How was my sleep? How did I feel today? Was I energized? Do I need some time to recharge? And then how can I do that? Also, am I experiencing any of my like yellow, orange, red flags, or yellow and red flags? That's kind of how I like to separate it. So you kind of have this zone of optimal functioning where you're like, okay, I'm in my green zone where like I can push a little harder and I can pull back a little bit and I can, return to my resting heart rate in a reasonable amount of time, like we talked about with the zone training. But say you tried to push zone 5 for a little bit too long, and then, you're able to sustain it, but you start to notice little things. Maybe the first one, yellow flag, your caffeine intake doubles. Yellow flag, you're a little bit more irritable with your spouse. Yellow flag, you are more forgetful. You left your wallet in 2 different places this week. Okay, yellow flags, good to note. Now we get into like feeling kind of tight in your chest. You just went off on your boss. You got this weird rash that's popping up. This shoulder pain just like won't go away no matter what I do. I'm really like irritable and can't seem to get on top of it. Okay. Red flags. You got to learn what yours are. And even thinking about this now as you're listening to me, like I'm sure some things popped up in your mind. Like what happens for you? What happens for you? And now we also have to stop judging it. This is not about weakness. This is not about a lack of a capacity to handle a heavy workload. We all know you can do that. Like we're not trying to prove anything here. The point is, if you want to show up more effectively, you got to get real about when you recognize your body saying, hey, too much, got to pull back. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to be anything that you have to justify to anybody else. It's just this moment between you and your body where you go, I'm good. I know my limits, and I'm going to take a minute to recharge because I know that's what's going to allow me to show up most effectively moving forward. I think a really awesome social example of this, and if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. I'm only a couple episodes in, so can't speak to the full series, but so far, the Simone Biles docuseries on Netflix is incredible. And if you don't really know her story, she was competing at the Olympics and really lost connection with her body. And it set her on this journey of healing where she had to pull back and she had to surrender short-term gains or fame or even pride because she knew she was in it for the long game and she had to take the time to reconnect with her body. And her courage in that journey, I think, is so reflective of what we should really strive for in our willingness to stand by ourselves and to represent ourselves with courage and confidence and a deep knowing that we know how to take care of ourselves and we know what we need. So I highly recommend watching that. I think there's a lot of really valuable lessons from her story. And then really start to think about yourself, what are your flags? How do you recharge? How are you sleeping? Like, not what have you done, what have you been able to maintain, but like based on the science of needing to sleep 7 to 9 hours to function optimally, like where do you fall? Are you getting enough REM and deep sleep? Do you need to get a tracker that helps you really gauge like where you're spending time in each sleep phase and how much output you're getting in the day and how stressed your body is throughout the day? Like start to really notice, because if you want to be your best, you got to start taking care of these things now. We're past the age of being reactive, and now it's time that we are really productive and proactive in how we take care of ourselves, because we got a lot of great things ahead and I know we all want to be present for them. I was talking to my client Christina this week about energy, and when we first started, she's a high output person. She does a ton of work. She has several businesses that she owns and runs, and very like physically demanding lifestyle as well. And when we met, it's like she was maintaining it all, but there was this level of stress that she expressed all of the time. Very much like a running on fumes kind of mentality and an internal feeling. And I asked her the other day about her energy levels, and she was telling me about how she's able to show up in her life now, how she feels more effective in every area because she just feels energized. She's actually fueling her body. She's taking days to just do yoga or just do breath work. Like she's not working out twice a day, 7 days a week, while also running 3 businesses and sleeping 3 hours a night. Like she's getting on top of her bedtimes and she's getting stuff done. And just knowing her and watching her transformation over this time, I can feel that her level of effectiveness has shifted, even though she's spending more time recovering. And because she's spending more time recovering, she's able to be so much more effective in what matters. And she's able to cut out what doesn't, which I think is another gift of really taking responsibility for this journey. So that's it, guys. There's so many directions to go with energy management, but I think starting with just getting real and learning, what does my human animal body need? If I got this, I love that idea of like an avatar. Like, what does my avatar need? My human avatar would benefit from blank. And it takes it out of this like I need and I'm not it, this blame and shame and all that we can kind of fall into with it. It's like, okay, I have this human avatar, this human animal that operates on certain principles. What does it need? And that's how you can start to really like parent yourself in an effective way where you're working with yourself and you're holding yourself responsible for being in charge of your self-care. Thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. I really just appreciate your support, and I am just so excited to share everything that I'm learning and to hear more about how these different areas show up in your lives. So if you ever have any questions or comments or want to share your story, like please reach out to me. You can comment below on YouTube. You can DM me on Instagram. You can email me. I always have my details in the bio below and just want to be available so we can walk this journey together. And if you really want to work with someone to develop a system that helps you optimize your energy, find a coach, man. It's like the best investment you could ever make. My life has been transformed with the coaches with whom I've worked over time and who have really taught me so much about body awareness. And now that's what I do is I work with people and help you optimize your health so you can maximize your impact in your life and show up in every area with excellence. So if you want to find out more, you can book a free discovery call. I have my Calendly link below, and you can book a call or reach out to me and we can schedule something that works well for you and just find out more if it would be a good fit and kind of the next step on your journey. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Please like, subscribe, comment, and I will catch you next time on Time Under Tension.